Some bosses are the toughest, some are the baddest, some are the scariest, but what about the ones that are just really, really big? They might be especially well designed or incredibly hard to take on, but today we're firmly holding our focus on the sheer size of these baddies, and I've gone for the biggest of the big. By the end of this list, you'll definitely be hoping that the old adage, the bigger they are, the harder they fall, holds water. I'm Jess from WhatCulture, and here are the 10 most enormous bosses in video games. Number 10. ADAMANTOISE, Final Fantasy 15. Final Fantasy has a lot of very large foes for you to sink your very large sword into, and among the top of them is the mountain/tortoise ADAMANTOISE. Final Fantasy 15's Titan needs to get an honorable mention at the top here, but ADAMANTOISE is particularly impressive, and squaring up against him is absolutely hilarious, as you're about a fifth of the size of his eyeball. Despite the fact that you're pretty much a flea to this dude, there is a way to one-shot him using the Ring of Lucii, but we're not here to detract any points from the big stony boy just because you can get lucky and take him out easily. He's still an absolute sight to behold, and became infamous when the devs originally said he was going to take 72 hours to battle. It ended up being significantly less than that, but not so much significantly less that you're not going to want to seriously consider having a bathroom break before you battle him. ADAMANTOISE isn't just an overly tall dude, he's a freaking see-it-from-space landmark with over 5 million hit points. And if that doesn't get our list off on the right foot, I can't think of anything else that would. Number 9. The Red Eye, Lost Planet 2. The Red Eye may only be a measly 15 meters tall, but he's over 300 meters long and is very much a long boy. In that way, he's similar to Phalanx from Shadow of the Colossus, who would you believe is actually not big enough to have made it onto this list. I did tell you, we got some really big bosses here. Phalanx is already mind-bogglingly large, a fact that's driven home when you need to sink a sword into him, and he's only 145 meters long. So trying to comprehend the size of Red Eye is nigh on impossible. Doing Phalanx proud though, the Red Eye is also sand-dwelling. Just trade out the majesty and wings for a gigantic nightmare worm called an acrid that has a mouth big enough to gobble up everybody and everything in its path. The Red Eye may be paying homage to its cousins on Arrakis, but it'd be great if it could do that anywhere away from us. This thing is absolutely terrifying, so it should come as no surprise that it's going to take a few very precise shots from a railway gun to take it down. Number 8. DALAMADUR, Monster Hunter 4. From a sandworm to a snake-esque elder dragon, we're migrating to the home of monsters big and small, and that's Monster Hunter. There's the Lavienta, who at a sprawling though thin 450 meters pretty much embodies what it's like to fight terrain. Then there's Zora Magdaros, essentially a sentient volcano that wants to kill you, coming in at a shorter 258 meters, but almost certainly topping the highest weight class. Then we have DALAMADUR, the Serpent King Dragon, who given his length of 440 meters and thicker frame than Lavienta, gets our vote for biggest boy in all the land. It's tricky to be iconic in a series famous for its many iconic monsters, but DALAMADUR pulls it off. There's so much of him, he doesn't even fit on the screen while you're fighting him, so you're reduced to hacking out whatever particular scale happens to be in front of you and hoping for the best. He attacks with fire, but I don't know how much that's gonna worry you when you're crushed under one of his claws. Number 7. Mothership, Earth Defense Force 2017. In Earth Defense Force 2017, you are a member of the Earth Defense Force. Go figure, and in the game's final mission, you're pitted against the Mothership. Depicted as a gigantic silver sphere, the Mothership is not to be underestimated. It's around 360 meters in diameter, but we're talking about a sphere and not another toothy tube beast, so technically we've got an even bigger bad on our hands here. That's just math. It's math I can't do, but it's math all the same. As the Mothership itself sets off to finish Japan once and for all, it's up to you to turn a cannon on the enormous disco ball of doom before it gets the drop on you and everybody else. You'll also need to avoid its web of deadly lasers as this fight devolves into neon chaos. This fight is exactly as hard as you'd expect it to be, and the sheer size of the bastard certainly doesn't help matters. Number 6. GRÜN, NIER Automata. According to the NIER Automata strategy guide, GRÜN is over 2 kilometers tall. He also represents a multi-stage boss fight, which is a shame because otherwise he's kinda cute, apart from all the trying to murder you. This thing is way too gigantic to take on from the ground, so you'll be airborne while trying to avoid bullet hell projectiles and lasers abound in the world's toughest edition of Space Invaders. You'll run into the Goliath in Chapter 0702, the aircraft carrier, once you've hit the flooded city. It was created to kill off androids, but incidentally, it just so happened to also kill its fellow machines, so it was abandoned in the depths of the ocean. The game even tells you he tried his best to be good and kind, and upon being discarded in the sea, cried out for his mother. So that's pretty freaking sad, and likely to make you feel really bad about the whole shooting missiles into his mouth thing. Number 5. Tau Volantis Moon, Dead Space 3. From a gigantic sweet metal boy to a planet made up of wadded up necromorphs, don't say we won't take a gigantic boss made out of anything. If you've reached the end of Dead Space 3, you'd be among those gobsmacked that the final fight is against a whole-ass moon complete with tentacles. To run you through the lore very quickly, basically the marker pulled billions of necromorphs and corpses into this central mass, resembling a planet, and that, my friends, becomes a brethren moon. Deactivating the alien machine let the moon awake from its idle state, and only upon reactivating it was Isaac and John able to kill it off by smashing it down onto the surface of Tau Volantis. Unfortunately, right before it dies, it does call out and activate all the other dormant alien moons, so if there is another Dead Space, that's gonna be a problem. Number 4. CRONOS, God of War 3. We skipped over the colossal titan in Final Fantasy, so to make up for it, I'm going to include the massive titan of God of War, CRONOS. Banished to the underworld and set to face off against Kratos in Tartarus, the encounter kicks off with CRONOS just straight up shoving the tiny protagonist down his gullet. You'll then need to fight your way out of his body, so yeah, look, this guy is straight up huge. He could literally crush the legendary Kratos like an ant. To drill the point home, one of your best attacks is to just hack away at his fingernail. You're essentially a mosquito against this guy. Thank goodness he eats you up, giving you the chance to deliver a serious dose of heartburn, with a side of disemboweling. CRONOS is said to be between 5 kilometers and 9 kilometers tall. Whichever way you look at it, bosses do not get much bigger than this guy. Well, that is accepting our final 3. Number 3. GONGEN WYZEN, ASURA'S Wrath. WYZEN's final form, GONGEN WYZEN, is not only the major antagonist of ASURA'S Wrath, he also grows to the size of a planet. More than big enough to squash Asura with a fingertip at roughly the size of the planet Gaia, this enormous foe is a threat of epic proportions. The only way of taking out the powerhouse of the 7 deities, whose mantra affinity is aptly violence, is for Asura to channel all of his wrath into a 6-armed blow that connects with the very end of GONGEN WYZEN's enormous fingertip. The mighty punch sends a chain reaction that thunders through the villain's entire 12,500 kilometer large body. Mashing buttons and getting mad has never felt so cool. It's awesome, Asura is epic, and the triumph is absolutely thrilling. Number 2. UNICRON, Transformers. What could possibly be bigger than a planet, I hear you ask? Well, it's a planet/supervillain that, even if you only know the basics of Transformers lore, nothing to turn your nose up at. Unless you want to see it, I guess. UNICRON can be encountered in the PS2 Transformers game. It's one of the earliest creations of the universe, and while we can't be totally sure of its size, estimates put him at around 50,000 kilometers wide. If it helps you, that means he's just shy of the size of Saturn. UNICRON sets out to take on Cybertron, and Optimus Prime does his best to attack its inner power core. Much like CRONOS, the only way you're taking this guy out is flying straight into his mouth, and that's exactly what you'll do. Number 1. Golden CHAKRAVARTIN, ASURA'S Wrath. And so we arrive at number 1, and for that we have to wonder, what foe could possibly be bigger than an actual entire planet? Well, for that, we're returning to ASURA'S Wrath. Topping a planet-sized deity may seem like way too tall of an order, but ASURA'S Wrath delivers with a boss who's literally sitting on a freaking galaxy. Golden CHAKRAVARTIN is the god of mantra, the true antagonist of the game, and this thing is so big it isn't just as big as the Earth. The Earth is a blip on its radar. You'll need the DLC to see this particular inconceivably enormous big bad in action, but it's well worth it if you want to see just how big a video game villain can get. During the fight, he actually throws planets and stars at you, and he's encircled by galaxies. CHAKRAVARTIN actually sits in the center of the universe, and you'll need Asura to get the maddest he's ever been to take him down. To some, GONGEN WYZEN is the biggest boss in all of video games, but the real ones know he isn't even the biggest boss in his game. That makes Asura all the more awesome, and CHAKRAVARTIN an absolute legend in the realm of gigantic bosses in gaming. And that's our list. Let me know down in that comment section if you can think of any other bosses you reckon we should have included for their size alone. As always, I've been Jess from WhatCulture. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you like, you can come say hi to me on my Twitter account where I'm at Jess McDonald, but make sure you stay tuned to us here for plenty more great content.